Okay, good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, November the 21st, 2023, and I'm going to be calling our meeting to order at 6:30 p.m., starting with our council meeting. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection, but before we do so, I'm just going to offer a number of things for us to reflect upon. November 19th to the 25th is National Addictions Awareness Week in Canada. And we know that approximately 21% of all Canadians will suffer from addictions in their lifetime. This week highlights solutions to help address harms related to alcohol and other drugs, and it provides an opportunity for the people of Canada to learn more about prevention, to talk about treatment and recovery, and to bring forward solutions for change. November 20th is Transgender Day of Remembrance, a day to memorialize those who have been murdered as a result of transphobia and to bring attention to the continued violence endured by the transgendered community. November 22nd is National Housing Day, and each day, National Housing Day is held on this date, a day to recognize the important work done by housing partners across Canada to improve access to housing for everyone. November the 25th is International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Designated by the UN, it is a day to raise awareness of the fact that women around the world are subject to multiple forms of violence, and 1/3 of women globally will experience a form of physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. November 25th is also Holodomor Memorial Day, which is commemorated each year to remember the millions of Ukrainians who were starved to death in Ukraine in 1932 and 1933 during the Holodomor famine genocide. On that note, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And we do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. I'll now move on to a number of community updates. So we're planning a pretty busy weekend here in Port Hope. The kickoff of the Candlelight Festival takes place on Friday, November 24th with the Candlelight Walk and Gathering in Memorial Park, along with a vendor market and late night shopping in the downtown core, and a sneak peek of the Festival of Lights and Trees at Capitol Theatre. The traditional Santa Claus Parade takes place on Saturday, November 25th at 1 p.m., and we hope to see your smiling faces again along the parade route. There's a lot of holiday magic happening in Port Hope through the month of December, so please visit our website for details. The proposed operating and capital budgets have been posted on our website, and the budget survey is still open for your feedback. We've had pretty good response to date, but it would be terrific if we had even more. So visit myporthope.ca for further details. And a reminder that the Finance Committee meetings take place next week on November 28th and 30th. This is where we'll be discussing and making recommendations on the final budget for next year. And all are welcome to attend. And as always, the meetings will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. I'll also want to just share with you that we're going to reorder our schedule for the Committee of the Whole, and we're going to bring forward planning and development when we get to the Committee of the Whole later this evening. And finally, I will be representing Port Hope at the UNESCO Global Forum Against Racism and Discrimination from November 29th to December 1st in Sao Paulo, Brazil. There is no cost to the municipality for this. I will be sitting on a mayoral panel entitled Cities and the Roles in Worldwide Anti-Racism Efforts. I did not want to break it to them that Port Hope is not exactly a city, but I am on that panel to discuss the integral role that mayors and local governments play in promoting inclusivity through policy development, cross collaboration, and future steps in the global fight against racism. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Moving on to item 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I note that none were received in advance to our meeting, but I will pass it over to, yes, Councillor.
Thank you. Just staff report 8.2, Walton Street. As I've declared pecuniary interest in the past, I will be again.
Thank you very much. We will proceed accordingly when we get to that item. We don't have a closed session. Moving on to item 4, consent agenda. Items listed under the approval of minutes consent agenda are considered collectively as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. The consent items are listed on the agenda, and would any member like to remove any of these items for separate discussion? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the minutes as listed? Councillor Andrews, Deputy Mayor Attridge, all in favor? Thank you. Business from previous minutes and notification of new business. Is there any business from previous minutes or notification of new business from council members? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6. There are no petitions or delegations tonight during our meeting of council. There is, however, one delegation during our committee of the whole. There is no correspondence on our agenda tonight. Now we'll move on to item 8, staff and committee reports. 8.1, staff report CS 1723, re-update to meeting schedule and notice of motion, process procedural bylaw review. Can I please ask the clerk to introduce this report?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. At the November 7th council meeting, staff presented a draft procedural bylaw and 2024 meeting schedule for council's consideration. It was referred back to staff at that meeting. Direction was provided at that meeting to change the schedule to reflect staff's original recommendation of a 3-week meeting cycle, but to change all of the meeting times for council and committee of the whole meetings to 5 p.m. This report outlines the chronology of events leading up to the bylaw and the meeting schedule that is presented to you today, along with the direction that was provided by council during the October 30th special council meeting, where the draft bylaw as well as the draft meeting schedule were presented to you, as well as the direction that was provided during the November 7th council meeting. If approved tonight, council will commence the necessary, if approved tonight, staff will commence the necessary arrangements to advertise and communicate this new schedule and procedure bylaw changes through our communication channels. We'll also be working towards updating our website to include this information. I note that this schedule is for 2024 and the changes of the procedure bylaw will take effect on in 2024. Nothing is going to be changing for the remainder of 2023. Before I pass it back to you, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to ask the CAO if he has anything further he'd like to add.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what's being presented to you tonight is per your direction. It's appreciated that the vast majority of the recommended changes have been well received by council. We recognize the question of start time is really what's top of mind with council to date. So we're happy to support you through your deliberation and any consideration you want to give further to that particular topic. But I also wanted to thank the clerk for leading sort of 10 months worth of review, ultimately informing the recommendations you received at a special council meeting, and then again at our last regular meeting of council. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I do know that this is going to be a matter for discussion, so who would like to start? Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So through the chair, first I want to thank staff for this report and for your patience as we continue to discuss this week after week for the past couple of weeks, but we'll get there, I'm sure. So after the last council meeting, actually during the last council meeting, we heard feedback, and I've heard feedback since that time. There's been two kind of sets of feedback that I've received. One is that all meetings should be starting at 6:30 and just go with 6:30 for both council as well as committee of the whole. I have also heard feedback about committee of the whole being earlier, such as 4 o'clock, and council being later, such as 6. And those are just the times that were put out there. Keeping in mind that within the procedural bylaw, there are some changes, meaning that committee of the whole will be more like a public meeting where we'll be receiving staff reports, getting information from staff, and that delegations and deputations, as well as a lot of discussion and debate, will move to council. I'm open to either of those. This is not a personal opinion, but both of those have been kind of offered to me, and I would like to ask the rest of council, before I put anything on the floor, your thoughts about those options.
Sorry. Councillor Less.
That a censure?
No comment.
Okay, and I've had this opinion right from the beginning. I think the procedural bylaw, by and large, is excellent. I like the delegations that come in front of council, because that means that the items that are discussed at committee of the whole, we have a time frame to think about what we've discussed. It gives the delegations a chance to present their thoughts on matters before we actually vote. The way we do it now is somewhat reversed. Question period comes at the end, and the vote is pretty well done, or has already been occurred. So I think the delegations at council is a good idea. I do object to throwing an extra meeting day a month into the mix. That means we'll have 8 more meetings a year, and we actually are reducing the number of meetings we're having. So instead of having council and committee of the whole twice a month, we'll have council, committee of the whole, council. So we're 3/4 of the way to doing the job that we're doing now. So that's one of my thoughts on the scheduling. The other one, 5 o'clock, was an accommodation to the 3 o'clock meeting time proposed. It was not a good accommodation, but it was just something that on the October 30th meeting, we were getting to a point where it was getting pretty long in the tooth, the meeting, and we just said, okay, let's see 5. But the reaction at our last committee of the whole and council meeting 2 weeks ago was that, get out of your mind with 3 o'clock. You know, nobody's going to be able to make it that works. Mothers that are trying to get here and, you know, get their kids organized and everything to try and make it here at 5 o'clock just isn't going to happen. So I would suggest that to me, I would prefer to stay with 6:30 and council and committee of the whole twice a month. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Clare.
I think I'm going to limit my remarks to the timing of the council meeting. I think that the 5 o'clock start time for council undermines the intent of the changes to the procedural bylaw, in that we're trying to make it very clear that we receive information from staff and then we hear from the public in a very substantive and official way at the beginning of council before we have substantive deliberations at this table. And I just don't think that 5 o'clock start time with delegations and deputations, which are an excellent addition, starting that early in the evening, I don't think that really works for most residents. So I think that would actually undermine the intent to provide more opportunity for public consultation and engagement in council decision-making. So I'd really like, at the very least, that we consider moving council later on into the evening.
Any other thoughts or comments from anyone? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I'm not fussed on the times. I'll certainly, take leads from my colleagues on this. I do like the 3-week cycle, like having 3 meetings, and I think it's an important part of what we do, because at the Committee of the Whole, we do tend to have a lot of information to get through. That is typically what would, make for a longer evening. So to be able to have a couple of those, I think, makes all the sense in the world. And then to be able to have the council meetings space in there. So the time, whichever we feel is the right time, I'll be here. But that'd be, my comments on where we're going.
And I'm just going to weigh in for a second and also just, again, really acknowledge and thank the work that went into this. I know what a tremendous piece of work this is, and we're all very grateful to you. And actually, I think it's sort of telling that what we're talking about largely is just start times, as opposed to all the other really important substantive changes that you've brought forward. So thank you very much for that. As you all know, my concern with our original setup was having numerous meetings back to back and being really concerned about being in this council chamber until sometimes past 10 p.m. and what that does for our decision making, and also not being fair to staff, asking them to stay this late, and also for those of us who have caregiving responsibilities, it's not a great model. My only concern with the start times, however we decide to have them, and that's really what I'm most concerned with, is we've had a lot of discussion about what is inclusive and what is exclusive in terms of those start times. And I just want to make sure we're not going to get it right for everybody. I don't want to exclude future council folks that may be considering running, where we're asking them to start at a time that conflicts with their work responsibilities. I don't want to start time that conflicts with when the kids come home from school and folks need to scramble to be at this council table. And I also want to make sure that we set a time that is most engaging for our public. So those are my criteria. So for me, a 3 p.m. is out of question for those reasons. I thought the 5 p.m. was a happy compromise in terms of starting with Committee of the Whole. But I'm happy to hear what the motion is. I want there to be, though, what we think is good for the public should also be good for the public that wants to serve in a future council. So we need to have some fairness and consistency, and understand that there may always be competing obligations for an ideal start time. But it sounds to me that Councillor Mink would like to put a motion forward.
Thank you. I have a motion here, but I can just throw a time out there, but I think we're all saying that we're good with whatever, but I really would like to know if there's a start time that someone really likes. I'll put it into motion.
Well,
So through you, Madam Chair, happy to take an amending motion, but I just want to note that at this point we are discussing the report 8.1. So the motion on the floor would be to refer this to resolutions and bylaws. When the time comes to consider the resolution, it's like I would believe it would be 9.1 is when the amending motion would be put on the floor.
Yes, and then I believe at 10.1 as well, right? Yep. So I don't know. Do you want me to just throw out a time, or do we want to go down and propose our favorite favorite time one by one?
Councillor Clare.
I propose that we stick with the 5 o'clock for committee of the whole and we move council back to 6:30.
I say leave it at 6:30 for both.
Any other thoughts around the table? Okay, I think we need to sort this out. This is, we're really picking, go ahead, Councillor Collins.
Okay, just a reminder, council can always change this 3 months, 6 months. It's within our power. So why don't we just make a decision, 6:30? I'm going to recommend 6:30. Keep it simple and short. Pass it. If it's working, it's working. If not, we'll just change the time. And if it's not working in 3 months.
Okay, so with that, we can change it to 6, but I don't need to make a motion at this time, correct? Okay, so
That
we'll
is
wait till
correct.
9.1 and then.
Okay, is there anything else at this? Okay, so can I get a mover and seconder to refer to resolutions and bylaws? Yes, Councillor Andrews and Councillor Collins, all in favor? Thank you. So we will be referring this matter to resolutions and bylaws, and we'll be discussing it at that time. So now we'll move on to 8.2, Staff Report WE 2323 Walton Street Reconstruction Phase 2. Could I ask the director to introduce this report, please?
The Walton Street tender was developed in partnership with staff and our engineering consultant, SEMA. SEMA is an experienced, knowledgeable, and qualified consulting engineer that has designed and constructed similar projects. The tender bid has been reviewed by staff, SEMA, and legal counsel. The engineer's estimate for this work, including addenda adjustments made during the tendering process, is just over $6.5 million, including net HST. In addition to the tendered amount, other costs for streetlight refurbishments, contingencies, contract administration, inspection, and material testing would require approximately $1.5 million in funding for a total of $8 million. Over 50 plan takers registered for the bid, and only one compliant bid was received. As part of the review of reasoning for bidders not submitting for this tender, it was noted by several contractors that the amount of work that would need to be completed in 1 year would have required most or all of their resources, as well as rental of equipment. Additionally, some of the traffic staging requirements would restrict their crews from advancing while other finishing work was completed, which they felt was another challenge with the schedule. They did not feel it was in their best interest to invest all of their resources in one large project. In consideration of the above and the fact that the available approved budget for this project is $6,409,000, it is suggested that the municipality consider retendering the work with a reduced scope of work from the west side of the bridge over the Ganaraska River to just west of Cabin Street. This approach would have less restrictive traffic staging requirements in that the contractor would be able to continue west past the intersection of Ontario Street with underground servicing while finishing work is completed east of the intersection. This is different from the original tender in that the contractor was required to stop between John Street and Ontario Street, completing all works to the west side of Ontario Street and having it open to traffic before proceeding. With the removal of this constraint, as well as the reduction in scope of work, staff feel that there will be more competitive bidding on a reissue tender. We cannot reissue the same tender without exposing the municipality to a lawsuit from the compliant bidder. Staff have confirmed with legal counsel that simply reissuing the same tender package but with a 2-year timeframe would not be a significant enough change to the tender to merit canceling and reissuing the tender without creating significant legal risk. With the proposed change in scope as identified in the staff report being considered this evening, it is estimated that work to the west side of Cabin would be completed by November 1st, 2024, with a construction cost of just under $4.2 million and total project cost of just under $5.2 million, which would allow for this work to be funded from the current approved budget. This work represents the most significant of the next stage of reconstruction, replacing all infrastructure between Queen Street and Cabin Street. We have confirmed with legal counsel that in the courts, this would be considered a substantive enough change to mitigate liability. Again, splitting the same recently issued tender over 2 years would not be considered a significant enough change to cancel without exposing the municipality to potential litigation. The new proposed Phase 3, Cabin to Pine, is considered more of a transition between the downtown and residential area. It is anticipated that a subsequent tender would result in more traditional construction pricing. It is recognized that there is risk that breaking out the tender into two may result in the overall project costing more. However, the first phase of Walton Street cost approximately $2 million, and it is anticipated that Phase 3 would have a price more in line with the bids received for the first phase. Splitting out the tender may result in a savings of up to $2 million. The total funds required to award today are $10.5 million, and an additional $4.1 million in funding is required. Reducing the scope will allow the municipality to budget additional funds as part of the 2025 budget. This is not the first time a project has been canceled in Port Hope for insufficient funds. Project scope can be adjusted and retendered and is generally a staff decision. This project has been brought forward to council for direction as it would be considered a significant change in project scope with a substantial impact on the community. And this report has been brought forward directly to council as it is time sensitive in order to prepare and reissue the tender for work to proceed in 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm sure we have some questions and comments around the table. Would anyone like to start? Yes, Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The disparity between the estimation is quite substantive. Is there any insight as to cause and effect or the factors that contributed to the substantial?
This is much higher than inflation and rising cost prices. This was not an expected cost.
Okay. Separate with that, Council, Madam Chair, and again to the Director, are we comfortable with Walton being delayed that long? We've just found out another critical infrastructure that supports this fire suppression system that's been mitigated thanks to staff. And are we at a state here that if we lose this critical infrastructure for Walton, we've lost Walton? So are we comfortable delaying this?
The most critical part is moving plans to still move forward in 2024. So reducing the scope still allows the most critical portion to proceed next year.
Councillor Mink.
Thank you, first of all. I was on committee, Works and Engineering last term when this began, and I appreciate the work that you have put into this in your team. It's a huge undertaking, so thank you. At the beginning, we got one bid, and you had said, I think you said the number 40. Was there 40?
There were over 50 plan takers.
Okay,
and only one compliant bid. We did receive another bid. It was higher and it was also disqualified.
Okay, so does the municipality, do we ask for pre-qualified bidders, or do we just put it out there?
This tender did not have pre-qualification, no.
No. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Janet. I know this has been quite a ride. If we send it out, so we break the project, we send it out for tender again. What if we don't get qualified bids at that point? What's plan C?
We don't have a plan C.
Councillor Lass.
Yeah, I don't think we have any choice but to send it back out and break it into two portions. It's not the ideal situation. As Deputy Mayor said, we may or may not get a bid. But we can't go forward with this.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to that point, to Jeanette's, we don't have certainty that what's being proposed here tonight is going to result in sort of a savings as to what you've received from the sole compliant bid, but we've absolute certainty that awarding the sole compliant bid at more than $4 million over the budgeted amount is just not fiscally responsible and not something staff can recommend to you tonight. So that's ultimately, if we want to proceed with work in 2024, which we very much do, what's being recommended tonight allows you to do that and to manage the greatest risks we have in 2024.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask a few questions, and with the utmost respect for this process and how incredibly challenging and difficult this is, and certainly it's not out of line with some of the difficulties that I've listened to with capital projects at the county level, and how we're living in a really brave new world when it comes to projects of this size, and risks and uncertainty and all the other things that make budgeting so incredibly challenging. I do have, though, a number of questions. I realize that looking at a success or what the only bid that came in being so much higher than what was anticipated is absolute sticker shock. But I wonder, is it possible that we underestimated what the project would cost? And are we necessarily protecting ourselves if it does happen in two phases, that we're not going to pay even more than the $10.5 million? And is that also part of, the risk in moving in this kind of direction? And also, if we do separate it out into two steps, are the risks, taking into account at this point fully the impact on our businesses in the downtown core of having to live through a longer process, given what we already know about the concerns? And so I sit from a place of, I know we have to find a solution for this, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions for me around, is it going to be better fiscally from the perspective of the overall project cost? Is it going to be better for the businesses from an overall cost? Because losing Walton Street would be losing our key identity and attraction for tourism, arguably in Port Hope. And is it possible that, we talked about, or Jeanette, you talked about how, the company that we used, SEMA, has got, such great experience. But I wonder, is it possible that something went wrong in terms of the design of the original tender? Is it possible that we should have someone else have a look at what they had put on the table? So that's just another question that I have as well.
So through you, the SEMA is very experienced and very knowledgeable, and I have every confidence in their ability for what the work they have done. There is no need to issue review for another third party. Is there some risk that the cost may be higher if we tender it and break it into two? Yes, that is a risk that could happen. And there is potential greater impact on the business community with breaking it out, albeit the main downtown core would still be done in 1 year. So the significant impact is still planned to move forward in 2024.
Councillor Less, and then Councillor Clare.
Maybe would it be feasible to put out 3 tenders, one for the entire job, one for just Cabin Street to Queen, and one for Queen or Cabin to Pine. And so there would be two small chunks. Maybe two different people would bid on the separate chunks, and in the, you know, require it to be done in the same time frame in 2024, or tender the whole project. The whole thing, two pieces. Well,
to clar-
you're going to be, you've got the tender anyways, which is the whole thing, and you say you're going to do it in phases anyways, so that's a natural break. So let people bid on A, B, or the entirety. Just a thought. I'm not an engineer, by the way.
There's also occupational health and safety concerns with multiple contractors working in the vicinity. We can't have
Just,
that.
it would be just like having multiple people from the same contractor working.
If two different contractors bid and were awarded, that would be very challenging. And I'm
Yeah,
not sure that's.
I don't know. As I say, I'm not an engineer.
Councillor Clare.
I just wanted to provide some comment on the impact to the downtown businesses. I think, you know, a lot of consideration has been given for that, and that was in fact what informed this tender and trying to get it all done in the one season. And I think that was very well received and appreciated by the local merchants that I've been speaking with. And I also know that there's been a lot of thought for that in how you're planning to re-tender. We've spoken about that. I had the opportunity, along with a number of other council members, to attend the HBIA AGM yesterday, and I shared this update with them and had an opportunity to speak to a number of local merchants who are HBIA members about it. And I think they were very pleased to hear that the plan was still to do that primary retail zone in 2024. And I didn't hear, I know it's not scientific because I didn't speak to everyone, but certainly those that did take the opportunity to have a conversation about the project did seem pleased that we were still considering that and trying to make sure that that was being protected. And they all thought a $4 million that we don't have was astronomical. So I think they also are sensitive to that, as difficult as this is going to be, obviously, for our downtown merchants.
Councillor Chris.
Director, would you agree then that this work is a priority? It's critical. It is at a critical junction. It needs to be done. Would you suggest this path, the proposal you have in front of us, is the most effective and efficient way of getting this work done in a timely manner?
Yes.
And I just have a follow-up from that question. What is the risk that we will be paying substantially more for a two-phase project? Because that's ultimately what's in front of us. So I want to, you know, there's never any certainty, but we're talking about a $4 million gap currently between what we budgeted and what we're getting, and splitting it into two. What are we going to be looking at in terms of a potential risk that number could even be higher? And I also, you know, I sit from the perspective of having been on this council and reflecting on asset management and big projects that former councils have put off and for which we're paying for dearly now and scrambling to try to find the resources to get the work done. So I understand we don't want to spend money, especially when something comes at us that's so much higher than what we planned. But it's a question that I'm posing to all my council members and also to yourself.
So the first, to put it into some context, the first phase of Walton Street cost approximately $2 million. The third phase would be very similar type of work. You don't have the complexities that you do with the downtown core in between Cabin and Pine. So it's anticipated that cost would be more in line with what bids we received as part of the first phase, not the exorbitant prices that we received for the second phase for downtown for this year.
Councillor Mink.
Thank you. And I do appreciate your concern about potentially that scenario being more costly. But if we move forward with the original plan, it could also potentially be even more costly than the 10 million. I think that one bid for the entire project, I don't think we can responsibly go forward. I do have faith in the recommendation brought forward by our staff. I think this is the best approach. There's all sorts of different hypothetical scenarios that could happen, but this is the recommendation that our qualified staff is bringing forward, and I would like to support it.
Any other comments or thoughts around the table? I wish we were not in this situation. I'm very nervous about this as a matter of record. I maybe it's also because I've been seeing the tail end of this, as I mentioned, with other projects, and I'm personally worried if we don't pay now, we're going to pay a lot more later, and that's a huge risk. And also, as you mentioned earlier, we have no guarantee that if we split it up this way, that we're going to have bids on this project. So Claire.
Yeah, I have another question about risks, but it's slightly different. If we were to go ahead and award this at a $4 million over our tender, what kind of risk would that pose for us with future projects if we set a precedent with potential contractors that we are willing to pay exorbitant prices well above what our technical advisors say a project should cost?
I think it's a point well taken. I don't think we can sort of define that risk here tonight. It would be, to your point, unprecedented for the municipality of Port Hope. If we weren't in a position where we needed your direction related to breaking this up over a 2-year period, we likely would have canceled this bid already. Jeanette noted sort of staff's ability to do so based on insufficient funds, full stop. The fact that we are, I can recognize the concern. I also recognize the concern in us not being able to define the risk to a finite amount and the uncertainty that creates. But when we sort of step back from this and have a discussion about potentially awarding a bid, because that is the other option here, potentially awarding a bid $4 million over budget, that's not a conversation I think staff ever thought we'd be in. We too don't want to be in this situation. We are, and we're recommending a path forward that gives us the best chance of success in the most responsible manner possible.
Deputy Mayor.
You might not be able to answer this one, so I'm gonna put it out there anyways. So I'm still thinking on Plan C. So if we split it up and we put the tenders out and we don't get qualified bids on the two parts, is that enough then to have to go back and say, hey, we're going to put the whole thing back together for 2 years? Or is that would that then trigger that kind of thing from a legal point of view?
So for clarification, the bid, we would only issue the one contract for 2024 and then another contract for 2025. So they would not be issued at the same time.
I recognize that. I'm just thinking if we put it out for the meteor part of Walton Street and we don't get what we're hoping for, and we find ourselves back here again going, hey, we still don't have that.
So I like we're trying to think out of the box, but essentially no. So that becomes the same thing as us not being happy with who bid, canceling it, reissuing a bid. It becomes a bid shopping. So my understanding is you're saying, well, we've done it all in one, that didn't work. Now we're going to split it up into two. If we're still not happy with that, go back essentially to the original plan. Do I understand that correctly?
I'm just thinking in the event that we actually don't get qualified bids. I'm not thinking that we get qualified bids and we decide we want to stop that. I'm thinking like what happens if we don't get qualified bids? We've got to come back again does that then reopen the opportunity to change the contract again? I'm just thinking that far down the road.
So certainly there's lots of potential risks, right? All of this is about managing the risk. Even if we were to go ahead, pay an extra $4 million, I'm not in engineering, but I would suggest to you that there is a potential that we would pay to have it done in a year. And sometimes construction runs late, right? So, even paying $4 million more does not guarantee that we are going to have everything cleaned up, everything done in the manner that engineering has taken great time to be able to lay out, to be able to accommodate, as best we can, given what is naturally going to be a disruptive activity. So I certainly, I certainly appreciate that. We go through the same exercises of what can we do. Ultimately, what we don't want to do is put ourselves in a position where someone decides to sue us and effectively we get nothing done and we still owe them all of the profit they would have made, right, off of this, right? That is our true ultimate risk here. Seeing variances in bids is not unusual, right? You don't always see all the lights, but sometimes we see them go to sign off and think like, what the heck happened between these three and this one, and then this one's an extra $1 million, right? A lot of that comes down to availability, right? We obviously had one that was interested in, said, hey, you can pay. We'll do we'll do our best to meet all of these. There's no guarantees, but we were going to pay for that. So I think, yes, there is risks to this. We do know that construction costs are still increasing, but they're increasing at a much lower rate than they were, thankfully, right? This sounds like from a risk management standpoint, we are still going to be able to address the key risk, right? Which is our main infrastructure, the key part of the downtown. So there are no guarantees, but we need to balance the risk here and the best value for our taxpayers' money, right? So we had 50 plan takers. That tells me there was interest in this. It wasn't 5 and 2 submitted. That would put me in a different spot. There were 50, right? So more likely than not, which is the risk we're trying to balance here, we will have more bidders. If we reissue this, right, and the first one, comes in and ultimately is going to end up being this plus the next phase, the equivalent of 10 million, we may not be any better off. We have more likely that it will get done. First, the next phase will get done during next summer. We also have more certainty that we actually got a competitive price, right? As opposed to working with one and spending an extra $4 million. That's, $4 million is a lot of money. If we were standing, I don't know off the top of my head here, but if I was standing in front of you saying we need about a 15% tax levy increase next year to accept this bid, I think the conversation would be very different. So I don't think we're going to, I think we increase the ability that we know we got the taxpayers a competitive price to get the job done for that phase and that it would be able to be done within that year. I think our bigger risk is doing a bigger chunk, spending too much money, and then it's still not getting done, right? So, for your consideration, if we are also going the 10 million, note that in the 2024 budget, we are just raising the second portion of the funds to be able to fund the existing budget, right? We're adding $3 million just for the existing budget. So if we're going to make a decision to add $4 more million to that, that money needs to come from somewhere. And as we keep spending before we're raising, we are then going to have more and more cash flow issues. So even if we end up doing 10 million to do 2 phases, the fact that one would give us 1 more year to raise the funds and we wouldn't be paying interest on that money likely outweighs the fact of any inflationary costs. And I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but just for your consideration, right, we don't know. We are trying to balance the risk and find the best value for our community.
Yeah, Councillor Mick.
And thank you for that. And just one point that hasn't been discussed, and I appreciate the thought behind what if we don't get more qualified bids by splitting it. One of the reasons for a backlog in construction jobs across the province is a backlog in labor. And it can be assumed that is one reason why we haven't got bids. There is a huge challenge in labor. So I have confidence that there are qualified bidders out there. It's just the entire scope of this project would be very challenging in the current labor situation that is in the construction industry. Doing it all at once, again, doesn't mean that they will have now as an entire project. So we could be incurring greater costs and greater length of time of this project. So again, I have confidence that this is the best approach. I think we will get more bids, and I think we may be overthinking that there is no one able to do downtown historic streets. They do it all the time. So it's not like we're looking for the one company out there. There are companies available.
Thank you. And yes, that was very helpful, Director Baxter. I do have one other question back to you, Director Davidson. Did SEMA at any point say to us that this project is too big to do all in one fell swoop? That in fact the responsible way to get the most bids would be to actually do it in a two-phase way, and what the cost would be involved in that?
No, they did not.
No? Councillor Clare?
I was just going to say, I'm ready to make the motion to refer this to resolutions.
Any other? Okay, so we'll take a vote. Yep, I think we're. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Items under this section are generally considered collectively as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. Would any council member like to remove any of the items for separate discussion? Councillor Mink?
Yes, 9.1 will be removed. We've discussed it already.
Madam Mayor, as Councillor Pearson has declared a conflict on the Walton Street matter, that would also have to be considered separately. I would recommend that you consider each resolution separately.
Okay, let's do that then. Shall we move forward then with? Should we start with 9.1 then? Yeah. Okay. 9.1, 66, 2023, recommendation from Corporate Services Committee, November 7th, 2023, regarding 2024 council meeting schedule. Councillor Adam, did you hear that? I just want to make sure you knew what. Okay, we're discussing 9.1, 66, 2023, recommendation from Corporate Services Committee, November 7th, 2023, regarding our meeting schedule. Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So the motion would be, through the chair, now therefore be it resolved that council approve the 2024 Council and Committee of the Whole meeting schedule attached hereto Appendix A with the following amendments. That the start time for the regular meetings of Council and Committee of the Whole remain at 6:30 p.m. and that the clerk be granted administrative authority to bring these changes into effect.
Can I get a seconder? Okay. Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor, who was the seconder for that?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Clare. I just felt the hand go up. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Madam Mayor, as that was the amendment motion, now the original motion has to be passed.
Okay.
And we need a mover and seconder for that as well.
Okay. Can I get a mover and seconder for the original motion? Deputy Mayor, second. Councillor Clare, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Moving on to 9.2, 68, 2023, November 7th, 2023, regarding Can I get a mover and seconder for that? In favor? Thank you. Moving on to 59, 2023, recommendation from Works and Engineering Committee, November 7th, 2023, regarding Contract 68, ENG 2023, and Contract 70, ENG 2023, Transportation Division Truck Replacement. Can I mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favor? Thank you. And 9.4, 70, 2023, recommendation from council meeting, November 21st, 2023, regarding Walton Street reconstruction phase 2. Can I?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say that Councillor Adam would have to, as he has declared a conflict.
Yes. Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Mink, seconded by Councillor Clare. Any further discussion? This is a really, really hard decision. I feel very, very conflicted about it. I'm just going to make that as a matter of record. My preference would be to still have someone review the plan. There's a lot at stake here. I know that Director Davidson didn't felt very strongly that we didn't need to have a another review of the plan, and I respect your opinion on it, but I feel very nervous about the kind of money that we're making a decision about, and personally, I would have been a lot more comfortable in having another review of it. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Yes, Councillor Mink.
Sorry, this is just not about the motion itself. Could I just request that we also have a call for those opposed when it's not unanimous, just so we could see the count for opposed? 'Cause
Yeah,
just to
we
make it
can
clear.
also do recorded votes if that's your preference.
Well, I think in this particular case, just as long as we have in favor and opposed, if there isn't unanimous, I think that.
Okay. 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 So we have a mover and seconder, and all in favor? Opposed? Okay, moving on to item number 10, bylaws. I'm going to read each bylaw title is listed on the agenda out loud and ask for a mover and seconder for each. 10.1, 60, 2023, adopt a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council and committee of the whole. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on this matter? Councillor Mink?
This one would be amended as well.
Yes.
Would I?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So that a bylaw, that bylaw 60-2023 being a bylaw to govern the procedures of council and committee of the whole of the corporation of the municipality of Port Hope be read a first and second time, and that the start times as noted in bylaw 60-2023 for regular meetings of council and committee of the whole meetings remain at 6:30.
Can I get a seconder? All in favor? Moving on to item 10.2,
Madam Mayor, we just have to vote on the original.
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you for the reminder. We're going to vote on the original. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favor? Moving on to 10.2, 65, 2023 zoning bylaw amendment application ZBO 8, 2023, 200 Ontario Street. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on this matter? Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you. 10.3, 66, 2023, rules and regulations covering construction, operation, and maintenance of waterworks systems. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you. 10.4, 67, 2023, amend bylaw 09, 2023, section 7 to delete reference to pre-budget approval contract 68 ENG 2023 and contract 70 ENG 2023, transportation division truck replacement. Is there anything further that anybody would like to add before we vote on the matter? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favor? Item 10.5, 68, 2023, appointment of Candace White, Chief Administrative Office. And before we vote on the matter, I would like to, from the mayor's seat, thank our acting CIO, Brian Gilmer, for his outstanding leadership and support and direction over these last number of months. This entire council is very grateful to you, and the municipality of Port Hope is very grateful to you. Would anybody else would like to add anything to those comments? Okay. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you. 10.6, 69, 2023, purchase and sale of 26 Shooter Street to Alexicon Energy. Is there anything further that anybody would like to add before we vote on the matter? Councillor Less.
Will this go into the 2024 budget revenue?
It will go into oh, there we go. There's Mike's on now, but 2023. So we expect to close this this week.
Yeah, we're required in the year in which we receive and the deal closes
So
to
it
recognize
will
revenue.
get closed this week then, eh? Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Thank you. Third and final reading of bylaws. Now there be resolved that bylaws 60, 2023, 65, 2023, 66, 2023, 67, 2023, 68, 2023, and 69, 2023 be read a third time, passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? We don't have any new or other business currently listed on tonight's agenda, and given the length of our agenda, I'm not going to be doing a county update this week. So we'll move on to question period. It's now time for question period. Remember, question period is for questions only and is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Please note, this is not meant to be an avenue to ask questions to staff. And if you have any questions specifically for council members, you can ask them now. So we're going to start with councillors. Any questions from around the table? Okay, any questions? We don't have any media with us today. Now questions from the public. And if you do, please come forward to the microphone and turn on the little button, and please state your name and address.
Hi, Erica Ham, Northumberland County. These questions might be a little bit of moot point given what was just passed. Let me pull up my notes here. I can appreciate the challenging decision when regarding the Walton Street tender bids that have come in, or the lack thereof. I have 3 different questions like I would like to ask. The first one was, when the original tender was put out, I understand that priority was given to have the businesses the least disrupted, but was consideration given by the engineering team or whoever constructed that tender agreement in the event of, did they have the foresight, I guess is what I'm looking for, to see that a lot of companies would struggle with that labor and manpower? Because we have to anticipate that even though we were looking for the work in the upcoming year, other companies would also have tenders on their books for that. So that's my first question.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to turn it over to the director.
So through the chair, we basically we tried. Well, based on the feedback received, we issued the tender for all of the work to be completed in 1 year. It unfortunately didn't work out as what we had hoped. I don't remember the second part of the question.
Oh, it was just the consideration. Like, I understand you were trying to appease the businesses, but from a realistic standpoint, like some of the other counselors and directors have pointed out, like, even though we hoped the work would be done in a year, delays are always to be expected. I'm sure all the PHAI delays are perfect, example of how construction just goes over the timeline and over the allotted schedule. So my question initially is, was that considered in that tender when you put out the tenders, or was it a short-sighted tender where you're just trying to appease everybody? Like,
It was not short-sighted. 500 meters, which is the length of the project, is achievable within one construction season.
fair enough. Thank you. My second question, again, might be moot point, but as it was pointed out on this side of the room earlier, the current budget that's being reviewed for approval right now is $3 million over as a ratepayer. That increases to a 7% for people that live in town and 7.3% for those of us who don't live in town. My question is, and just for clarity, the motion that you guys just made, you've gone ahead with that 10 point whatever million dollar bid. Is that the way I understand it, or is it just for future discussion?
Maybe what we could do is, do you have a question about the proposed budget on the table right now?
I do actually, because the question that I have is, the point that I'm trying to make is, right now our current budget sits at 3 million over with that 7 and 7.3% respective increase. If you guys go forward with this Walton Street proposal, we're going to be another $4 million in the hole that we don't have money for. So my main question is, the budget doesn't balance itself. So what shortfalls are you going to take away from the community to ensure that that goes through? If so, and also, would you guys all be willing to take a salary decrease to help offset? Because ratepayers are already facing a 7 and 7.3% increase on our next annual budget.
Okay, I'm going to take that in two sections. One, I'm going to ask Director Baxter to speak about the budget question, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Director Davidson about the actual Walton Street project.
So in reference to the $3 million, so was part of the current budget that we'll be discussing next week, $3 million towards Walton is included as part of that. It is not a $3 million addition to our regular tax levy just for that project. So they're not one and the same. And also, just for clarification, what council just passed was not approving the $10 million, right? So that part's now off the table. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to correct those. The first two comments you made were incorrect, and I can't remember where we went from there.
No, I was just asking for clarity. With the proposed rate increase that ratepayers are looking at right now, based on from what I've read from what's been released, 7% for people that live in town and 7.3% for those of us who live just outside of town. So I was referencing that the budget doesn't balance itself. And if we go with things where we're adding more money, where we're in a deficit, what shortfalls are we taking from other areas of our budget to fund these things? And in addition to that, if you guys are going to run a deficit, given that the ratepayers are already expecting a substantial increase in the 2024 year, is all of council willing to reduce their compensation? Because, you're asking ratepayers to pay another 7%, and we all just listened to the back and forth about adding another potential 4 million. So to me, I think that's a fair question. Like, if ratepayers are expected to keep anteing up and paying for the mistakes and paying dearly, as the mayor pointed out, for past councils, I'm just asking the question. And I do have a third question after this one.
Okay. I'm just going to say a few brief comments about your question about the budget. First of all, we actually haven't gone into deliberations about the final budget, so I think it would be premature for us to be commenting on where we're going to land with our final budget. Certainly we'll bring up your question at the table next week as we continue to deliberate. I think it's also worth noting that many council members are ratepayers too in this community, and I suppose not a great comparison to make, but we're not the only municipality or area that's really facing some formidable budgetary challenges. It is the reality of the world, and Durham region, just to our neighboring side, has landed on a 10% increase just to keep some basic services running. So these are very, very difficult times, and this council is going to take our upcoming budget deliberations very seriously, and we haven't made any final decisions on the budget. So please do join us for those budget deliberations next week.
Thank you, absolutely. And I understand that potentially they're just potential right now, but I'm just asking for the sake of argument because they are on the table for discussion. Okay, my last question, given that we have a lot of infrastructure and whatnot that needs to be replaced, maybe there's a reason why we're going to a third party or a subcontractor, but wouldn't it make more sense, especially in these economic times where inflation is so high and the rates of everything just seem to be skyrocketing? Basic economics dictate that in order to reduce inflation, we have to do it at home and figure out a cheaper way to do it. So I posed the question to the entire council, wouldn't it make more sense to reinvest in our township and rehire staff to complete these public works jobs like sewage, gas, etc.? Like, why don't we have, like, the sewer guys that we used to have back in the day? Like, to me, it just makes sense that we do this work in-house instead of hiring out. I can appreciate if we don't have the manpower, or maybe we don't have the skilled labor that is required, but to me, it just seems like, why wouldn't we have people with these special skills within our workforce already and doing it in-house?
Thank you for that question, and it looks like Councillor Luss would like to weigh in on that.
I'm a big proponent of using specialized people on a contract basis because they're in, they're out. If we hire permanent full-time, we put ourselves at about a 35% disadvantage just alone on benefits coverage for these same people. So there's a balance. We do need some employees, but we don't need everybody to handle everything when there are specialty trades out there. Be more expensive, in my opinion.
And our acting CAO would like to comment.
Walton Street's a sort of generational project. Whether this was 30 years ago, 50 years ago, this is a project that would be contracted out. The municipality doesn't have remotely the resources needed to undertake such a project in-house. In fact, the vast majority of Ontario's 444 municipalities would not be completing this project in-house. It's just simply not cost effective.
Fair enough. I appreciate your insight. Thank you. I guess before I leave, I have a question for you, Olna. When I was here a couple weeks ago, you had indicated that on the Mayor's Corners, you would post the study from Kellyanne Marshall, and that's still not posted. So I'm wondering, when can I expect to see that? Thank you.
That's a terrific question, and I'm going to turn it over to our acting CAO. I had wanted to post it on my Mayor's Corner.
I think there was a commitment to post information on the Mayor's Corner. I accept that. The Mayor's Corner is ultimately a municipal resource. We don't make a habit of sort of posting submitted materials on either side or any side of a particular argument just for public consumption. I defer to the mayor with respect to sort of the editorial comment on or editorial content on the Mayor's Corner. Ultimately, I'm not opposed to disseminating the information we're discussing. I think it has been disseminated. I would suggest that the Mayor's Corner, despite the commitment during the meeting, is probably not the best avenue. So perhaps we can look at a spot on the website for this particular issue, but we don't just post user submitted content or sort of content related to one topic on the municipal website as a resource. So I know that's a convoluted answer, but maybe it's something we can revisit outside of this meeting.
Okay, but the if I can follow up, it wasn't just user information. It was a worldwide case study that had looked at all the pros and cons of the situation at hand. If it can't be posted on Mayor's Corners, so be it. But can I have you email that to me personally, please, and thank you.
Yes, now I can. Yes. And any other questions from the public? Yes, please step up and just your name and your address, please.
My name's Clayton Wilkins. I live at 50 Cavan Street, around the corner from here. It's the building behind Pharmasave there, the big one across from the river. I'm standing here today trying to represent a lot of tenants in this place that I reside, and also some of them are here and a lot couldn't make it. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but there's been posts made recently online about the infestation of cockroaches. We have a very, very poor management that is leading this building that seriously does not care about us. It has been years knowing that there's an issue in this building. It had spread from one apartment that a tenant in there had died. They went in there and noticed that it was infested, completely infested. They did not shut it down. What did they do? They set up a yard sale where people can come in and buy stuff, and it spread throughout the whole place. They neglected it, and it took months for them to do anything about it in this one apartment. And now numerous tenants, including myself, very clean tenant, keep my place top notch. Other tenants here keep their place top notch. We are now infested with them. There's probably over half the apartments in here are infested with them. The management does not care. They take forever to come back to us. When they do come back to us, they try to place blame on us, saying that it's our fault, we're filthy, this and that, which is not the case at all. They totally blame us no matter what happens. We've reached out to the health board. They've came in and they say, oh, it's not a big deal. We have videos of some units in here where they're on the ceilings falling on tenants' heads. We also just had a senior resident finally move out after he was hospitalized for the last 3 months because he's obviously could not see what he was doing. He was eating food out of his toaster, which had an inch thick of bugs in it. The guys, obviously cockroaches are dirty here. We reached out to David Piccini, and we were instructed to come to you for help to do this, because I guess he says you're the only one that has power to do anything in our case. I don't really know where to go. I don't really know what to say, because I'm clearly frustrated and clearly angry. I want to move out. I've not paid rent in a while. I'm so close to having the sheriff come and lock my doors. I cannot move out. We have two elevators in our building. The one that is running is getting stuck constantly. The service elevator, which I need to move out, which is tall enough for my furniture to fit in, is non-existent, and I need to move out. I want to move out, and it's hard to move out while also being infested with these and trying to manage it. We're asking you for help. I don't know what else I can say about this, but honestly, all of us at 50 Cavan are terrified. We're losing sleep. We're stressed. I'm sleeping with my lights on because I don't want to get crawled over by bugs, and nobody seems to want to help us. And all we're doing at 50 Cavan is begging for somebody's help, please.
Thank you very much for coming to bring that. Do you want to just stay up here so it can actually answer your question? Thank you for bringing this to this council. Thank you for the information, and I know that Councillor Collins would like to address your question, and then Director Williams, I'm going to turn it over to you as well.
Yeah, thanks very much. We can hear your frustration. We can hear the emotion. Absolutely. So there's nothing, again, major part you've overcome it is the education and the information. We are now aware. So with that, we do have, and I'm going to pass over to the director. We do have the strength, if you will, in regulatory requirements. So my portfolio, everybody's assigned portfolios. I work with the director, and please do not leave here today without my business card and the directors, and this will start the process. There is a process, okay? It's not going to be fixed tomorrow, but it will start the investigative process, and we have to follow the process in this because there's some challenges there within the Tenancy Act and et cetera. So bear with us, and I'll pass it over to the director.
Thank you. So just to let you know, so I oversee several divisions, and one of them being municipal law enforcement, which takes care of property standards here in our municipality. So the current property standards bylaw can potentially assist you. I'm not aware of 50 cabin being an issue that has not been brought to my personal attention. I would like to speak to you to ensure that a formal complaint's been filed through the property standards process so that we can, as the municipal law enforcement division, can do what we can. We would also, I mean, you said you had the health unit there. That's obviously someone we want to involve, but definitely we can put our resources in to see what we can do for you.
I'd like to say I appreciate you guys honestly wanting to look into this for me. Clearly, it's frustrating. I can go on and sit here for an hour and talk about the lack of management we've had and the amount of supers that we've had in the last 3 years that I've been there. And there's obviously reasons why they can't stick around because they have no help above. I believe the ones we have already now, just from the flack that they're catching from all of us and not doing anything, given their 2 weeks notice. Now we're going to be, again, there with nobody on site, nobody doing anything. So I do appreciate it. And I will stick around to get your business card and get things in motion. I'm sure everybody at 50 Cabin and the people here in attendance appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you again for the question, bring this forward. And I think we can also probably disseminate some information to the community just to remind folks of what the process is for filing a complaint. Director Williams, would you like to just speak to that?
No, absolutely. What I would suggest to yourself and all residents in municipality who would like to file a complaint in relation to property standards or any provisions of our municipal bylaws is to go online, and we actually click a button under municipal law enforcement that says file a complaint. That'll initiate the process. You were asked to provide some information about the aspects of your complaint, contact information about yourself, so all our officers can follow up as required, get that pertinent information, and start the investigation. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move now to the confirmatory bylaw. It's now time for confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceedings that took place this evening and provides for formal adoption through a bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? So we are confirming 14.1/70/2023, confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of November 21st, 2023. And this concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda. We've reached the end of the agenda and I'm in a position to adjourn the meeting. We're adjourning the meeting at 7:52 p.m. and we will reconvene in 8 minutes at 8 p.m. Thank you.